So, welcome again. So, what we're going to do today, I'll show us end to end on how you can start a project and create. I'll take us through the concept of pipelines with an existing application we already have, and I'll show us two methods we can use to deploy that application. So we'll look at the code that we currently have, and then we'll build a CI pipeline for that code. And then afterwards, we'll take what do you call it? We'll take that code and create an infrastructure as code, and then deploy the application to that app service that we just created. So please, at any point you feel you didn't catch anything I said, just stop me and let's go over it again. Okay, let's go over it. Okay. Okay. Did I think there was one time we did one, how many of us remember, where we had to deploy um, an application to I think that was a Node.js application. If you guys remember, I think we've also deployed one Python application, right? How many of you remember? There's one with, I think some persons did their own with Tomcat server, some other persons did their own with a different kind of server, an Express server. Do we remember?
Yes.
That was the time we used
Yes.
Clone for the first time, right? Yeah. Yeah. So we've done something like that before. So if you remember, if you cast your mind back to that, you notice what we did was you did a Git clone to your machine, right? And then push the thing directly from your machine to app service, right? So when we build pipelines, what will happen is that we add another layer to that process. And what is the essence of that? The essence of that is to consistently build and test and run that code in such a way where, one, it is visible for everybody to see, everybody within the team or organization. And again, it's also helps us to maintain a consistency in terms of workflow. So what Ikena is working on his machine and what I'm working on my own machine and what Henry is doing on his own machine, the single source of truth to whether you did it correctly or not becomes the pipeline, as against you just taking the code directly and then deploying from your machine. So that's one of the reasons we make use of pipelines. So today, I'm going to quickly share my screen. Just make sure I clear everything that we don't need so that we are sure we have the right. Okay. Let me know when you can see it.
We can see it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So we're going to so we created this one yesterday. This one was the what we were meant to use for the assignment. So I was able to figure out why we were not seeing the releases, and it's under the organization settings. So what I did, let me quickly show us that for those of us who might be curious or want to find out how I was able to solve it. So I went to organization settings, and then under the organization settings, you see basically all the settings, that controls everything, but the policies, and then we're looking at the pipelines. And then if you click on settings, you notice here it actually it had this thing um off. This thing was on before, which is disable creation of classic build pipelines. Now, and then disable creation of classic release pipelines. So this was a problem, the classic release pipelines. So I had to just go and disable that so that we can, if you go into any of the projects now, you'll see that code. You'll see that code. So what I'm going to do now is I remember I have two applications here. Uh, I know we have one that um, uh, I really doubt if this application is still running. This was the one. This is that test one, right? That one I gave us as an assignment. Mr. George, that's a good suggestion, but the essence of demo is for me to do it and then everyone, does it on their own. But I mean, I'm open to if we want somebody else to, if we want to put ourselves in two groups so that we can do it together. But the essence of demo is so that while I'm doing it, we all try and see if we can follow and see if ask any questions while we are doing it. Okay, so I'm going to try and open also this link, right? So this link, just the slab, maybe I'll try and walk through this one. So this is doing a deployment into using ASP.NET. I'm concerned that this no longer exists. It exists, but the version that this code is written in might give us a problem, but let's see. And then they added this. For some of them, they are not really what I need. So I'm going to try not to um, uh, deviate so much from it, but I'll try and keep to that. Okay, so let's go back to this. Now, the first thing we need to do is we have our code here. Now, you're going to have your code. Your code is the application, basically, your developers have written. This is a C# application. It's a .NET. If you look at it, you see they have an API, you see C# here with the controllers. You see the controllers. If you go to so views, this is where .NET .NET puts there, and then this is the home page basically. So this is what you see when you browse to this page. So this is basically the code that will come up. So I'll come back here if we're able to successfully deploy this. All right. So, all right, let's go. Now, let's assume the code has been created. So, like again, I always say you're not a developer, you're not a software engineer. So you work with them as the DevOps engineer. So your job, for instance, they've done this and then they want to deploy it. So they want somebody to help them create a pipeline that will deploy this thing to Azure. Now, a couple of things you need to bear in mind is that uh, the deployment is what we call the CD, right? Continuous delivery or continuous deployment. It means that if you go to your Azure portal, you need to create a web app. Now we want to deploy this thing to a web app. How do you know the web app you're going to create? It's very simple. This is a .NET language. I mean, .NET framework, C Sharp. So you're going to create a web app that supports .NET and then supports the language, right? So this is how you find out. But first of all, we want.
Hi, Chris. So sorry.
Yeah.
So how do you know that it's a C sharp?
I already said it now. It's a C Sharp application. So
how do you know?
How do I know?
What will you see and to make it that okay, this is a C
You
sharp?
just ask the people writing it. Do you understand? You ask the people writing it.
Okay.
I'm assuming I'm in your organization, right? You ask the people writing it, what language is this? They will tell you, right?
Okay.
Or you come into a new project and then they say, hey, we want to deploy this. Like I'm currently working on one project and what I asked them was, what kind of application are you guys working on? And they told me we have 2 Node and TypeScript applications. Do you understand? So that was how I knew the web app to create. So you basically ask them. That's how to know that. If you're familiar with code, you can check yourself. And that's the second one. But that's not what I always advise. I always advise to ask. If you're not the person who wrote it, ask, because people can bundle a bunch of all different things inside here, right? And you can't assume, so you just ask. Okay.
Chris, can you increase your front, that is the size of your screen a little bit?
The better.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, sir.
All right, so let's see if 100 is fine. Yeah, is this okay? I just want that.
I'm already using my glasses anyway, so.
All right. I like dark. Do I make it white? Do we prefer white?
I think it's good like this. For me, I don't know.
This is fine.
Okay. All right. Okay, so developers are writing their code and everything. Now we want to start the continuous integration, which is this continuous integration with Azure pipelines. Now, Azure DevOps have, so we'll go to pipelines. Now, Azure DevOps have 2 types of pipelines. There's what they call the classic pipeline, and then there's what they call the YAML pipeline. Azure DevOps classic pipeline. So now they actually deprecating the classic pipeline. So a lot of you may not meet it. You may not use it a lot in your journey. So they have classic pipelines. Classic pipelines provide developers with different work for deploying applications. Now, classic is like, it's not everything you do it with drag and drop. All right. So a lot of persons actually prefer it. When I was starting my journey in DevOps, even though then we use VSTS, Visual Studio Team Foundation. That was what later Microsoft transitioned to become Azure DevOps. That was back in 2018. But it's drag and drop. It's drag and drop. But because they've pushed to code first approach, we now have what we call the YAML. Yeah, exactly. So it's called YAML, Azure DevOps YAML, YAML pipeline. So you can see that first one. So this one uses code approach. And YAML is like YAML is a type, is a code that it has JSON format. So you see that format we're using ARM template. It's a little bit like that, but with a little bit variation. Like Python. So if you've actually ever looked at any Python code, or if there's any of us here that writes Python, you notice that Python has this thing for indentation. In fact, what makes Python is indentation. So if you move away, just slightly away from, if it's not indented properly, it can fail. So YAML follows that same approach, but everything, the entire payload is actually can be you can actually put it into a JSON payload. So yeah, and that's basically that. But we're going to look at the two pipelines. So, but for now, since we are starting, I'm just going to use the classic pipelines for us so that we can be able to create a continuous integration pipeline using the classic. All right. So the first thing I want to do is create pipeline. So I'm going to create pipeline. Now, remember, when you start, you need to be in that project that you want to deploy. So I cannot, if I want to deploy this, I will not be inside here and be looking for it. You understand? It doesn't make sense, right? So you want to make sure you're in the right project. So I go into that project. That this is where my code lives. My code lives inside of Azure DevOps, but your code can also be any other place. So let's assume your company doesn't subscribe to or for repos, that's Azure repos. You can still create your pipelines and bring your code from anywhere. We're going to see just that in a few minutes. So I can do it from a number of ways. The first is that I can create it from here, which is setup build. So if I click on this, it takes me to pipeline directly. But the only thing is that it gives me a YAML pipeline. So this one is so intelligent that it figures that, oh, your code is actually .NET and all of that. And then it spins up a YAML pipeline for me immediately. And then I can run this. Right? But we don't want to do this because I'll have to start explaining all these things to us, which I don't want to do now using this format. So I'm going to switch back to pipelines and try to create it from scratch. So if I click on create pipelines, now it will open this page for me. And then the first thing it asks me, if you cast your mind back to what we did yesterday, I'm just going to quickly open that up. We remember I told us that the 4 pillars of continuous integration, if you remember what we did yesterday, that the first is what? Version control, right? So meaning that you need to find where your code is. The version control system manages changes to your code, so your source code over time. So the first thing we want to do is to look at the version control. Now, these are several places where your code can be living, right? So it's either Azure repos, right? You can see it here, Azure. So if this is where our code is, you can select this one. Of course, if you look at the icon here, you see it's the same with what you have on the left, right? Now, let's assume your company uses Bitbucket, but they have decided to build pipelines. I've done projects where their code is Bitbucket, but they're using Azure DevOps, and then there's no limit. It can also be in AWS as well. So is your code living in GitHub? You can actually click here and then connect. So the first question they ask you is, you need to connect your code. Remember, continuous integration is you want to start rolling that code as developers are making changes. You want to be seeing the changes they are making. You want to subject that change to a number of steps, or what we call tasks. And as I'm going to explain very soon. Now, for me, I don't now, if I click on any of these things, it's going to default immediately to YAML, and which is not what I want. So you need to be very, if you want to use Classic, you need to make that decision first before you move. Now, if you see this option, now I don't want to answer this question here. So what I'm going to do is, now of course, if it doesn't fall under any of these ones here, they ask you, is it another Git that we may not know? Then you can tell them, right? So, but I want to use the Classic editor. So if you look at the bottom here, you see, so it says use the Classic editor to create a pipeline without YAML. All these other ones we use YAML, but the Classic editor won't. So I'll select use Classic editor. Now it switches to the Classic editor and gives me the same thing. So if you're following that tutorial, this may be the first thing you may have missed, because that's the first thing it gives you.
Yeah.
So
yes,
once you
that's
click
why I
on,
got it wrong.
yeah, so once you click on this, it takes you here.
There's a question, sir.
Yes, sir.
At my end here, I can't find the use the Classic editor.
Exactly.
But you guys were here now when I explained how you enable the Classic editor.
Yes, I mean on my Azure DevOps.
That's what I'm
Once I click,
saying. Were you here when I explained how you go and enable it?
okay, I think I came late. I will be honest with that.
Yeah. So
Okay, I'm sorry.
So stop coming late. I think you won award of late, and so you will not jump out of the class today. All right, so I'll go back to it again. If you go back to, I said that if it's not showing on your end, it's because, and that's why I started, go to organization settings and come down to pipelines, go to settings, and then check if this thing here is enabled. If it's enabled, disable it. So go and off this one as well. So make it like this, then you should see. Like if I put it on, let me show you back what I mean. If I put it on, go back there, go back to that project, and then try to create pipeline. You see, I cannot see that Classic editor. You see that, right? So if you're not seeing it, it's because of that. So go back to organizations, go back to pipelines. That's what I started from there. And then disable, you see the disabled creation of Classic release pipelines and Classic build pipelines. So you want it enabled. So is that okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, sir. So let's move. I'm going to start all over again, and then create that. I switch to use Classic editor. And yeah, so the same thing you're now seeing is your code in Azure repos, GitHub, and GitHub Enterprise Server. So these are for very large organizations where they use GitHub Enterprise Server. You know, it's like a private instance of GitHub. Okay. And then Subversion is another one. And then we have Bitbucket, and if it's any other Gits, maybe like AWS. So if it's AWS and all of that, you need to now click on that, you add a connection. You know, the same thing with any of them, you need to add a connection. Now, this connection is actually what we call service connection, right? Is what we call service connection. Now, if you're going to connect two different entities, two different applications, because these things are actually application. Azure DevOps is an application, right? GitHub is a different application. Now, Azure DevOps is going to be trying to get the code from GitHub. Now, GitHub will not know who you are. GitHub will actually, remember, if you are the one, if it's your account, you know you need to enter your password, and then it also prompts you for two-factor authentication, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So think about it now. When an application is now trying to, because you're going to hear me talk about things like this as we proceed in projects like this, where we're talking about service connection. Now you in in the world of automation, nobody is there to try to put in password and the rest of them. Do you get it? So nobody. So how will GitHub know that this person is a legitimate requester? This person who is trying to get this code is legitimate. Do you understand? How will it know? If not, any other person can just come and then create something, and then we'll be getting the code from there, right? So you need to actually set up what we call service connections. Now, I'm going to walk backward a little and go to project settings. I'm going to leave here. If you come under project settings, just so that you see it at the bottom here, you see what we, under pipelines, if you go down, you see we have service connections. Now, you you can come here, first of all, and create a service connection. So say, for instance, you're working with something like Jenkins, for instance. Jenkins, uses a server. You need to come here and select Jenkins and then create a service connection. So whether you're using Bitbucket, you can create a service connection, or any other thing that you're using. All right. So you can, first of all, create the service connection here. Now, if you create it here, it's going to stay here. Right. Another way where you can create it is actually from that method we want to create, but sometimes it can fail, or sometimes you may not have the right permission. That's why that person that was getting you don't have the authorization, is because you are not an administrator on my project, right? You are not an administrator in this organization. So that thing is trying to tell you, this thing you are trying to do, we don't know you. Can you prove to us that you have the right to do this? So you need somebody who is an admin to have created a service connection. So sometimes it's not because what you are doing is wrong, it's just because you don't have the clearance to do that. So just know, in case you're working on maybe a third-party project and you want to create a pipeline, you can't go to a company and ask them, make me an admin. Nobody's going to do that. So they will give you something like a contributor role. Remember, we've done those role access and management. So they will give you that kind of contributor where you don't have rights to be able to create service connections. So you will depend on someone to have created it first so that you can now use it. I don't know if that makes sense. Did we get that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So I'll go back now. Let's finally create our pipeline. So back, and then classic. You should have been familiar with this by now. So our code lives here. Now let's assume our code was in GitHub. Click on this, and then we'll click authorize, and then we do that, and then we just try to ping and then exchange some packets, and then it will, under the hood, create that service connection automatically. But our code is in Azure repos, and this is why I tell you that, why I was saying that for me, Azure DevOps is beautiful, because and sometimes I try to, if I see a greenfield project, that's a project that is starting from ground, I just push them to use everything here, because it makes your life easy. It makes your life easy. Like Coils, Coils Academy, all our application, our website, everything is hosted on Azure repos, and then Azure DevOps for the pipelines, and then we are running on Azure. So our code is actually in Azure repos. We've actually seen the code here, so I don't need to go back there. And then you see the project, so you select the name. The name of the project is Parts Unlimited, so it has defaulted to that. Remember, I have two projects, right? October and then Parts Unlimited. So I'm in the right project, and then the repository. If you have multiple repositories, they will show up here. But in this project, I only have one repository, which is Parts Unlimited. And now the next thing is the branch. So what branch? We all know what branch is, right? You guys have actually gone far. I feel like clapping for you people. So you know what a branch is. So I'm going to stay on the master branch. All right, so let's see if that's all we have here. Right, so yeah, so once you get that, you click on continue. So I click on continue. Now, the next thing is what type of project are you building? So it says locate the ASP.NET template and click apply to apply this definition. So what I'm going to do, it's a build and test an ASP.NET web application. So I go back there, I already see ASP.NET application, I click on it. What will happen is it will automatically generate all of this. Now it has set up our pipeline. Now this is a build pipeline. Now I'm going to explain everything we have inside here, and then we'll run it. Now, this is what we call a CI pipeline. Now, if you remember what we talked about yesterday, casting your mind again back to this thing here, the pillars, it starts with version control, package management, continuous integration, and automated build process. So this one contains building, compiling, packaging, running, automated tests, right? And then package management. Package management, I said it will put the code in such a way where it would be deployed. What did I call that in? You can remember the word for that. Who is waiting for another person? Why not speak up?
What is the question, sir?
You're not following.
I'm following, but I'm kind of.
Please, what's your question?
See?
So you are doing 419.
Package management system.
I know anytime people ask you what's your question, they are not intending to answer you. So I'll move. All right, but the end of your CI pipeline is what we call an artifact. So your artifact is what you deploy. All right, so that's how you package your code. Whether any language, any whatever, it ends as an artifact. All right, so the end of your CI pipeline, if it's successful, it will give you an artifact. And yesterday I was explaining to Ross that if you try to download maybe WhatsApp, for instance, now WhatsApp is actually a bunch of code, right, that somebody wrote, but for it to be able to run on your device, is saved in a particular version, right? So that depending on the operating system, that the thing can run on your system. So that version is actually an artifact. Think about it like that. Like if you want to install PowerShell on your machine, for instance, if you're using Windows, you go and download the MSI package, is it not? Or maybe .exe format. That's the executable. And then when you download it, you can now click on install, and then it will install. The same way, you're not just going to carry that code and give it to your end users. It's meaningless to them. You need to put it in a format, and that's what we call artifact. All right. I'm trying to break it down for you so that you can understand it. So we want to take that code, bundle that code, and then now because it's .NET, again, because it's .NET, now look at all those we call everything inside of here, we call them tasks. All right, tasks. We're going to run these 6 tasks. We're going to run the code against these 6 tasks. Now, what are the tasks? Now, this task, this first one here, is just to tell the code the kind of NuGet version. Now, this is actually something that has to do with .NET. I'm not sure how I'm going to explain it, but it's like dependencies. It's just saying, for all the dependencies you have, can you kindly use this version, right, to try to align them together to make sure that it's consistent. Now, the beauty of this is this. Let's assume we have 5 developers, maybe Henry, Korode, and Kende. They are developers in our team, and then Edu, George, and maybe Juliet or somebody, or any other person, maybe Cheesy, is our DevOps engineer. Now, it's possible that the developers will have using different NuGet version, right? They're using different NuGet version because every now and then developers are running updates on their machine to make sure their machine is performing well, right? It's making sure that everything is working accordingly. So it's possible that they have moved away from the version that was agreed when the entire team actually agreed on what to use. So, and this is why pipeline creates that consistency. So we are saying we have tested and we have ascertained that this is the version we want to go with. So this statement, this task is actually putting this thing in, is telling that code to use that version. Now, the beautiful thing about classic pipelines is that you can actually also convert classic pipelines to YAML pipelines, but you can't change YAML to classic. Now, if you look on my right hand here, you see view YAML. So you can see that classic, that use, you see the distinct version of it here, the YAML. Now, I want to use this to explain these 2 things. Now, the classic just puts it like a drag and drop. Now, the pipeline, the YAML puts it in, in this type of format. Yes, exactly. Now, it puts it under steps. All right. Remember, if you notice, I was calling this thing task. So this thing is under everything you have here, we call them steps. All right. Now they run. So the step here is actually running what we call tasks. So, and then all of these tasks run inside what we call an agent. Now, an agent is the underline. Now, remember, you are automating this thing. You need to also know that you are automating this thing. You're automating it. Automation meaning that we want to run it on a type of machine that would look like what we have in production. So whether the developers were using Windows or Linux machine or Ubuntu, we want to standardize this thing because those are the problems we are trying to solve, right? Well, that's why we are DevOps engineers. So the problem is that we have different mix of people using different systems, using different things, and then production is running on Linux, for instance. Let's assume our production system is running on Linux. So what we are saying is that all these tasks here, we are going to run it on Linux and then subject that your code, subject that your change to all the tasks here. If it passes and gets to the end, that means it is worthy for deployment. That's what continuous integration is. So the task, if you select this agent here, you see it comes from an agent pool. Now, the agent pool here, I'm going to also show us that. Now, agent pool, you have the option of using different types of pool. Now, this one is inheriting from pipelines, but if you click on Azure Pipelines, it gives you the option to select the type of agent you want to run on, whether it's Mac OS, Ubuntu, Windows, and blah, blah, blah. Now, how do you know the agent you run it on? And this is where some engineering comes into play. You need to, the first thing would be, where are we deploying this code to? So that's how you find out where are we deploying it to. So on Azure, if we go to portal, our portal.environment, if we go to, so now I'm going to try to create a web app. I'm not going to create it, but I'll just, what's this? What's this? All right. All right, so I'm going to try to create a web app. And who did this one? All right, so I'm going to try to create one. And see, so when I come here, you see a couple of questions. It's asking me, is it code? I say yes. It's saying what stack. Now, remember what we want to deploy is .NET, right? So I can say ASP.NET 4.8. Now, you see it has defaulted to Windows, right?
Yes.
Are you with me? So that means if I'm going to deploy an ASP.NET, because you need to remember, we said that the idea of DevOps is to shift left. So you need to be thinking about, now, this is right. This is the end of the game. The end of the game is your deployment, is it not? Which is the far right. The far left is the code, which you want to deploy to your far right, the environment. So this is the environment. So ASP.NET is where I want to deploy. And then on Azure, the only option to deploy ASP.NET version 4.8 is what? Is Windows. Right? So do you think now I should select Mac OS here or Ubuntu as the agent to run this thing?
Windows.
No.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. So you guys are following it. So I will select Windows. Do you understand it? So this is how you get your agent. If you go and read about this thing, there's a lot of story. Oh, agent pool is, and that's why yesterday I didn't want to. I have it in the slide, but it was going to be very, very complicated for me to explain all of that to you guys yesterday. So I just decided not to just jump it. So I'm going to show you. Yeah, there are several stories about agent pools and all of that. But in summary, that's just what it is. It's just the kind of machine that, all right, that will run your code. So how you know it is just look at your code, what environment are you going to use, and then just select one of it. All right. So now there are some other things you need to also learn about agent pools, but I'm not going to talk about it now. For instance, is if you're in a very large organization, all right, there's what we call parallel jobs. Okay, remember, Microsoft gives you only 1,800 minutes. Now, once we click run, this thing is going to run for a couple of minutes. So so once the developer clicks maybe push, then this thing will start running and then check. Now let's assume it runs for 10 minutes. Now that 10 minutes, imagine we are 50 developers. All of us run this thing in one day. We run it 5 times. I mean, that's a very, very small one. Sometimes people run pipelines 50 times a day. So imagine if we have a large team, we can finish up that 1,800 minutes, right? So that's why you will now need to now manage your own pools. That's what we call self-managed pools, All right, but for now, we are going to use the one Azure provides. So that's why you have the ones that are private, and then we have the ones that are hosted. All right, so for now, I'm going to leave this as inherit from pipeline. Any question on that? All right, so I believe no question. So,
hello, Mr. Chris.
Yeah.
When did you started? I think you said 6 o'clock.
Yes.
This is just 6 o'clock.
Okay, so it's like you you know that the time has actually adjusted. You know, UK Europe time has adjusted.
Oh my
so
God.
It looks like you didn't know.
I'm not current again. No.
Yeah, sorry.
So you started 1 hour ago, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
started our normal time.
I'm not. The exam did not even. I didn't even know what is going on again. In fact,
Don't worry. So just try and follow, okay? Because what we are doing now is this is the first time we are doing it, so you can still catch up. All right. Like you were not here yesterday, I talked about the both of us have talked about the makeup class. We're still going to have it. So, but we may not cover some of these things we're doing now. So it's good you follow up from here. All right. So, so in case somebody's wondering how did you know the task to fix here? You know, I was not the one that fixed it, right?
Yes.
So in case somebody say, okay, why did you put this one here? Why did you put this one here? No, you know, I just selected .NET and it pre-populated this thing for me. Now, these are the defaults. Now, but these are some discussions that you need to have with your team. There are times where the code can become very complex and then you need to add a few more things. All right. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as simple as it is. All right. And then go back to that lab we are following. So we go to the next thing. Right. We just leave. I was just trying to explain what all those things mean. Okay. For us. Now, so the next thing is, if we go to that here, it says the process for this build its pipeline is easy to follow. After getting the source as well, we use NuGet to restore any dependent packages. So that's what NuGet does. So it stabilizes it and then it does a NuGet restore. In case anyone is missing, then the project will be built and tested. That's just it. So .NET, we just use this, restore this, and then it will do a build, and then it will do a test. And then it will publish symbol part, and then it will package it. If you cast your mind back to these 4 pillars, which is package management. So it will package it will build it, and then it will package it. All right. So let's go to the next thing. It tells us to select the variables tab. Is it here you can configure special characters to be used during the build, such as configuration or platform. Now, this is just variables. So you use this one where you have, let's assume you have things you want to pass. How many of us remember? Let me open it. You know, if you remember your template, you know you have something called variables here. How many of you noticed it?
Yes.
Yes. So there are times where you can be using variables in even your infrastructure as code, or your application. Now, what are variables? Variables are it's you understand the concept of parameters, I believe, where we have something like storage name, and then like for here, we are not passing the parameter name, right? We're passing the parameter name. We define it here, we're passing it here. Now, imagine where you now saying that not just the parameter name, I want to also add something to my parameter. I want to add something to my parameter. For instance, we do this a lot in storage in what we call for storage name, for instance, storage account names, whereby let's assume an organization uses let's assume for anything anybody create, we append maybe ASP to it. Are you getting it? Just to make sure that it's tied to this organization. So if you're from the finance department, you're creating something, whatever you create, I want to be able to append something to it, maybe -fin, just so I differentiate you who is creating it. So as a global user, I can create a variable. Now, what that will do for me is that irrespective of what you pass as a parameter, because it's parameter you can change, the variable you can't change. So what will happen is this: I will say I want to add this variable, so I can go and define a new variable. Right, I can go and define a new variable here, and then I can say test, and then give it a value, maybe ASP or -ASP. Now, -ASP. Now, what will happen is inside of this storage name, remember, this is storage account name you have created now, and then you're saying you want to pass the storage name as a parameter here. But me, I'm saying that I want to force you, whatever name you pass here, I'm going to add something else to it. All right. So I will go there. There's what we call concatenation in programming. So I'll concatenate that. I'll concatenate that, which is like add something else to it, and it will allow me. It will allow me be able to pass my own value to it. So this is one way I can actually pass it, either take this and pass it here, or define I think I've forgotten the actual syntax to do that, but I'm going to check that and maybe try out with one. Anyway, it's beyond the scope of what we have done for ARM, so I'm not going to complicate us with that. But what I'm saying is that there are times where you use variables. Now, for instance, for production, we want to use a different variable. For development, we want to use a different variable. So these variables within pipelines allows you to use things like that. For instance, there's this simple variable here. We have system.debug. The value is false. Now I can turn this thing, the value, to be true, because those are the two values, I know them, that you can use for this, right? So this thing will make it anywhere you see. If we go into the tasks, there are places where you see it's actually making use of that thing. What will happen is that it will just pick the value from where you already have it. Now, something like this one here is it's a variable. This build configuration system.default working directory is a variable, but those are global variables. They are predefined variables. If we click on this, you're going to see them, a number of them, like build.artifact staging, system.debug, which is that one I showed you now. You see it has two values. System.debug can be true or false. So these are variables you can use. Now, there are a number of them here. You can actually use them. And there are times where you want to see some special things about the agent that is running. Remember, that agent is a computer. It's something that is running your job. So it's possible you want to find out the working directory, on your machine. On my machine, if I want to find out my current working directory, what I would do is PWD, right? And then it shows me that you are inside of users this place. So this is where you are. So how do you do that in a pipeline, for instance? Okay, so there are commands. So there are built-in variables that you can use. So once you use them, it will output that place for you. For instance, you want to find out if my job, what is the status of my job? Did it fail? Did it succeed? And the rest of them. So you can just use agent.job status. Now, you don't need to define it here because it has already been defined. All right. I mean, you don't need to go and start adding the value for something like that. Just go and inject it into, excuse me, inject it into this task that you want to see. Maybe you want to find out if it's something passed or whatever. All right. So we're going to leave this thing simple as it is. I'm just using all of this to explain some of those things you're seeing there. So we are still following this thing. So variables, you're not doing anything there. You're just to show you that it's there. So I'm going to go back and switch that one back to false. Right? So nothing changed. So we move to the next thing, which is select triggers tab. And then this trigger will enable you to automatically invoke build on the schedule when another build completes or when changes are made to the source. So if we go to triggers, so basically we are running through all these buttons here. So if you go to triggers, now triggers is, so this is where we enable continuous integration. Now, what does this mean? We are saying here, whenever there is a change, all right? So if you disable it, it will need you to manually come anytime a developer makes a change, you need to come and start this pipeline to start running. Now, that's not what you want in an agile environment where you want people to know about their system changes early enough, right? So if you click on enable, what will happen is that it will, I'm going to use all the defaults for now. I'm not going to select any other thing. It allows you to just select how you want this integration to run. For instance, I can decide to say, okay, I want to exclude master branch because I don't expect people to be making changes to master branch, right? Remember, master branch will have to come after a PR, a pull request, right? So I expect people to be working on their own branches. So I don't want to be running my master branch every now and then. So I can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to filter and then exclude the master branch or exclude any other branch. But like I said, I'm going to leave all the default. And then you can enable continuous integration, which is what they did here. And then we go to the next thing, options. So options, what does option do? Option allows you to change the build number, all right? So you may not get a picture of this until we run this thing. So when we run it, you're going to see this thing allows you to this is the format, when this thing runs, it's going to run in a format of date, year, month, day, and then it will come out with version. It will start with 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, depending on the number. Now you can actually come and tweak this thing depending on the standard your organization follow. I think I've shown us this thing, GitHub. Um, let's see this Microsoft Home. So for instance, you look at this one, you see how they wrote their own version number. So this is the current release, the most recent release of this AWS CDK is v2.103.1. How did they arrive at this? How did they arrive at this? That's what we are setting here. So if you want it to build in such a way, you can actually format it here correctly. And then once the pipeline starts running, it will be moving in that fashion. All right, it will be moving in that fashion. And then internally to the pipeline, of course, GitHub has their own pipelines, which is what we call actions. But we're not going to talk about that. We're learning Azure DevOps now. You notice that that thing keeps running and generating that number until it gets to the number that they push out and say, okay, this one is fine. All right, so that's for options. And then history, of course, you know what history is. History will show you all the things and changes you've made before. So, but for now, we've not made any change, so there's no history. You will see who changed it, and then the type of change, and then what comments the person made, just to track what is happening in your pipeline. All right. So if all is good and fine, the next thing we'll do is to click on save and queue. All right. And so I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to save and queue. And then you can add a comment, right? I can just do first creation of my pipeline using all the defaults. Now, again, it's good to comment, but a lot of times I don't put comment because I run this thing sometimes, a lot of times every day. So you see what happens is that it queues it for me and then it fails immediately. The no posted parallelism has been purchased to request this, blah, 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 blah. All right, so Microsoft has still not changed from this nonsense. The issue is with billing jobs. It's a billing problem. Purchase. I've actually set up billing for this. Not sure why. So this is what I was telling you. You have 1,800 minutes. I've configured billing before. Why are you guys doing this? All right. So for some of you, you may see this on your own end. I actually configured this. All right, so let's go back and try it. So we go back to that pipelines. And then we see our job failed, it didn't. And so they gave us this no boosted parallelism has been purchased or granted. So we want to run new job and then click on run. And let's see if it doesn't fail this time. Failed again. So you see it comes out with the dates format 2. Please leave out the following form. This- Yo. Okay. Can you find this book? Okay. Let's do the second one. So sorry about that. These guys keep making life difficult for people. Yes. I already added this team earlier. I paid for it. I already added this thing. Why is this proceeding? All right. Um, sorry, guys. You're not even allowing me to use the one you say free. I've paid for my own. I want to use it. So let's run it again. If it doesn't work, try something else. Looks like the head is correct now. right? So you see the pipeline is running. Now it will run all those check. If you go through them one after the other, you notice is running. You see that use NuGet is running the NuGet. Now, if you take it from the first one, you see it goes to the pool and then runs a, you know, it runs an agent, right? In Windows 2019, and then hosted agent, and then it started. Now, the next thing it initializes, and then it runs what we call pre-jobs. So basically, it tries to spin up those machines and then get your code ready, get the machine ready to run everything that we want to run. And it just takes it and then does the remaining things, bunch of code. So you see it has run this one, it has run the NuGet restore. It's currently building the developer's code now, right? So if everything goes well, goes as planned, you will have this code successfully getting to this point where it will publish an artifact. But for now, there's no artifact, it's still building. So it's checking all the codes, everything. So any questions so far while we wait for it to finish?
So my question is, what you did to know you were trying to run it before and it wasn't running. I know you are trying to configure some subscription.
Yeah.
So if we run into such problem, what do we do?
Yeah, so what you need to do is that I've had that issue in the past, so that's how I knew how to solve it, and then this pipeline failed. But what you need is a billing problem. So just make sure you attach for some weird reasons, Microsoft actually, I don't know, and they may have their own reasons, I don't work for them. They bundled Azure DevOps into Microsoft Azure, right? So if you type Azure DevOps, you see Azure DevOps is now integrated as a service inside it. However, if you click on it, it takes you out of Azure, right? So I think what they did by that is they now allow you to, like this is this thing, and then you see it opens to my project. So what it means is previously, maybe I'm just guessing, it could be that people were running this thing and they were not tied to Azure, some kind of authentication, whatever, and then billing issues, right? So they are now looking for a way to, that's my own theory, to kind of tie you to an Azure account, right? So for you to be able to run pipeline, you must connect it to an account that you have access to.
So is it free or we have to pay for like most subscriptions, like Azure account itself, you are paying?
Like I told you now, like if I showed you here, so this is under organization settings, you go to billing, right? So if you set it up here, the thing is, I think I stated that you have 1,800 free minutes. I'm not sure if you heard me when I said it. Yeah, so
I heard it. I even saw it on the screen here. Yeah.
exactly. So if you don't use up to that, nobody's charging you for anything.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you understand? But if you use more than that, they charge you. Previously, we could use that without adding any ID card or credit card. You know, just like you're trying to subscribe for something, 14 days trial, and then they'll tell you put your card.
Yes.
Do you understand? You know, previously you could use the free without putting any credit, but what I'm saying is they've made it in such a way you can't use it without having it attached to some billing.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. why that job failed. I hate these things when it fails. And then, guys, this is where your life can be messy. So you see, we've run it 3 times. Are you seeing for each of the run, that number is increasing, right? Do you notice it?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and that's coming from, if you notice what I was explaining, that's from the options here. So it is using date format, year, month, day, and then it's going with this reverb. Yeah, exactly. So if I change this thing now, it changes. So if I use 1.0 point, then use this thing, for instance, it will start and then start increasing to 1.1, 0.2. Do you understand? So that's how you derive that thing in an automated way. So if I click all runs, you notice that I've run it 3 times. Then you see it. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. All right. So let's see why this last one failed, because it ran, right? And then it failed. So let's see. It looks like it failed in some of the tests. So it had 6 tests, and it had how many tests? 14 tests, right? Okay, 16 tests, yeah.
16 tests, yeah.
16 tests, and 6 passed, 8 failed. Yeah.
failed.
So imagine you are the DevOps engineer. Is this your problem?
No.
Thank you. So your job is done.
You fire the code people.
Yeah?
The developers.
Okay. Is this the part where
Yeah, you don't even, you just tell him, bro, go and fix your code, man. Don't disturb me. Your code is not passing. So you can just, of course, he will be seeing this thing, because remember, yeah, he will be seeing it, because all of you, and that's why I said it's now the singular source of truth. Remember, the young man was happy. Oh, it's passing on my machine, but maybe he had changed few things and the pipeline is broken. Do you get it? So you see that his code did not get to the end of the pipeline. I'm not sure if it's making sense. So his code is not getting here, it's failing here. So if he succeeds in getting here, he will have an artifact that you can now help him deploy, of which you have automated it. So I'm on record, so I don't want to say this, but trust me, our job is a chilling job once everything is okay.
Perfect.
All right, so so that's the goal of actually this. I wanted us to see if we could set it up and get to this place. Of course, I know why this thing is failing, because that code is actually old, and a few things have been messed up because of the current version. But I mean, this thing was written in 2019. This is 4 years after. So, but if it fails, it's not, you are not the developer. Do you understand it? So once it's failing in the test, then you tell him, bro, go fix your code. Right. So you check that in pipelines. And then if he tries to manipulate it again, he now tell you, please now rerun it. You rerun it for him. So okay, I'll rerun. And you can rerun failed jobs, or you run a new one. And it does say, okay, let's see if it will, maybe the machine was, do you understand? So this is where that, so it's no longer a wall of confusion. Are you getting it? It's no longer a wall of confusion. Two of us, we are seeing it. Do you understand it? So
yes,
he can now, I mean, if you want to help him, this is where you can now, because I don't have so more details on what is going on, I can go back and enable that while it's running. I can go back and enable this variable system.debug. So this debug now gives us insight into what is running. So if I enable this thing to true, you're going to notice something, but let me allow you to finish first. You're going to notice something. I will have what we call verbose login. So I will get more insight into what is failing and what is not passing and all of that. And then I can tell him, hey, I think it's this line that is wrong. But a lot of times is so you if you look at that, you see where it's coming from. Now you can ask him end of start trade true. So this is failing, and so you can ask him to go check what is going wrong here. Now, this is the details. It failed with exit code 1, so it means it did not finish. So this is what he needs to check. This mode DT execution post execute. He goes back to his code and try to see, okay, what I want. Like I can look at error. I can filter by error on this page. And then I see error message, test method, pass unlimited or unit recommendation, and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a stack trace. So this is something he needs to look at and then fix, and then he should be fine. All right. But for you, your job is complete. You can show him. And again, if you are in a company where like I've worked in the past where you have strict tech leads, if a developer test starts failing a lot, it's a red flag on that developer. Right? You can see his pass percentage is 37.5. It means he's writing either stupid codes, he needs to be fired, or they need to put him on this personal improvement program. All the projects I've worked in, the minimum we set for developers is 90%. All right. Any questions? Is it interesting?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's making sense now, but it's kind of complicated.
Okay, which part is complicated? Remember, what we are doing is I just walked you through this lab to show you how to do it. So it's just I did it very slow, but this thing I will do it in less than 5 minutes.
Okay, if I should ask question,
yeah,
what the end point will be like if this thing passed, and then it will have an application we deploy on maybe that web server.
Exactly. Okay. So what we'll now do is we will create a CD pipeline to deploy that artifact to a web server, a web app. Yeah. So, but you remember, you would have already created that one. Do you understand? But it's because this is our first time, we are just doing it one. But normally I'll create both of them, right? I'll create my release pipeline and then create that release. So this is the deployment pipeline. So are you seeing it? So, but first it will ask me for an artifact, which I currently don't have. Are you getting it? So this is where you connect your artifact that the developer has, provided based on his stuff, and then you use it. So, but for now, I don't have anyone, and then I now create my deployment. Am I deploying to an IIS server? Are you deploying to Kubernetes? Are you deploying to app service? Do you get it? So this is where everything we've been doing makes sense. So this is
I can get the picture now. Yeah.
So if it's app service we're deploying to, we just deploy. So this is why classic pipeline is good. Because if it's YAML, you need to write this thing by code, but classic just tells you, okay, I mean, if you can even deploy from here to AWS. You can deploy to AWS by what you need to do. First of all, you go to what we call marketplace, but we will get to that. Like I said, if you are able to complete all those projects I showed you yesterday, trust me, you can do anything. Because it touches on everything almost everything you're going to see within.
So but now that if we deploy it and it fails, so how do we deliver?
Yeah, so the thing is, because it's a test that is failing, but that's a good question. Because it's a test that is failing, I'm going to show us something which sometimes I don't want to say you can do, because it's a very bad thing to do. You don't want something like as critical as test suites to be failing, right? Because your test, let me open the code that is running. So, I mean, I did not write this code, but I have a bit of knowledge. So I'm just going to use that. If I open the test now, the test is based on this unit test. Now, it's running some mock, all right? So it's doing some mock data and then it's fact checking them, all right? Just to check if those things are correct based on what you've written. Do you understand in your code? So if the developer has made a mistake, imagine this test database set that somebody wrote, maybe to check whether the database, of course, they're using entity framework here. So imagine one of that tests is what is failing here. I don't want to, because the moment you allow this thing go in, because you know, of course, every system you can bypass. All right, you can bypass. And because what I want to show you now is how you can actually bypass that. But you don't want to bypass critical. Now remember, you look at the goal, and this is where DevOps, that's why it's engineering, because you have to make decisions. You know, we all want happy customers. So with this thing, is it okay if we fix it, or do we improve it? So we now have that discussion. Do you understand it? And again, you're not having it in a way where somebody is thinking that you're not happy with him, or the person can say the facts there, all right? And then they can fix. But for a classic pipeline, if it's YAML, you know what you just do, you delete this thing, or you comment out the code. But for this, what you do, you can right click on it, and you see you can remove it or disable it. So if I disable this task, if I save and queue it, I can just say disabled test in this. So what do you think will happen now? Will it pass or fail?
It will pass.
It passes.
And then somebody now reviews it and now say, this guy is like, is it your girlfriend that is writing this code? Why are you allowing her this to pass? Of course, you create shabby stuff. But yeah, we expect it to pass because we've disabled that listing. So, but again, it will just give us an artifact, and then we can deploy that.
We just want to see the end result at least.
Yes. Yeah, I know that's what you want. That's why I did that as well. But so you now see why the permissions are limited for people. You see why we did things like authentication and access management and the rest. So you see what I did. Now imagine it's a developer that have that access.
Yeah. That's dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's why we use access, give people the only access, and then you hire a DevOps engineer to manage, and then he's firm, he knows his onions, and then you can push back. You see, it's published. All right, so you see we have, but I mean, if it's me, if I'm in an organization, if I look at this, it's already a red flag. You know why? If I look at this pipeline, I see you run it 4 times, 1 passed, and all of them is in the same commit number, meaning you did not change the code. That means something happened here.
Yeah. Right.
Do you understand? I need an explanation on what happened here. What did you do?
It takes a professional to catch a professional.
No, I think it's something you do, but I remember all these things tied together. You know what we are doing now? We are joining it together. So Git is the thing here because this is the branch you are working on, right? So this is the last commit that was made. So nobody has changed something. How did this thing that was failing suddenly start passing?
Just passed.
So because if I check this commit, it takes me back to the repo. So this was the last commit. It's the same thing. So why was those other things? Why did it now start? All right. So, but again, we don't want to make somebody feel like we hate him. So that's that. And then if you want to build your release pipeline now, which is the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to try to deploy that application. But first, we don't have something on the portal, right? So I'm going to create, and okay, who created this one? Then can I use it? Is it what? Okay, it's Windows. Fantastic. What framework?
Check if it's AS.
Well, I'm not seeing it. It's ASP.NET. Who created it? Sure.
Let's create a new one to avoid failing.
Yeah. I know we are not, you guys are pro now. If it fails, you people will help me. All right, so let's create one quickly. Let's just call it RG test release. All right. So let's assume we want to the name is Paths Unlimited, right? I'm not sure if that thing will, if it would, let's see if it will deploy. So we have a code, we have running stack. I'll put it ASP.NET 4.8 and then deploy to SQS. I'll just use the default. I'll use a test. If people don't like it, people test. Selecting the thing. Use this one. And this. Then you are create and then create. Now, you see what I have done now. I don't want to do it as a DevOps engineer. I don't want to come to the portal and create. So I'm going to deploy this thing first of all like this, then come back and show you guys how I can use ARM templates and use my templates to, I will from here deploy my templates. My template will go and create this app service, right? And then deploy the code. Does it make sense? So I will show you guys how we can use that ARM template we were playing with here. We'll deploy it. So you see this thing will happen end to end with just one click of a button. It will build and then it will take the code, package it, and then run that for us. All right, so let's go back there. Let's see. Yeah, our deployment is okay. So let's go here. It's running. Okay. So let me go back to the pipeline. So yeah, so I'll go back, leave, and then I want to open this thing back. I'll create a release pipeline. Remember, the release works with classic. This release is classic. So I'll click on it. So this is the continuous deployment. Now you see it's asking me, what do you want to deploy? You see how beautiful this thing is. So you can say Azure App Service deployment. So this one, you read the description. It says deploy your application to Azure App Service. Choose from web app on Windows, Linux, functional apps, and the rest of them. Okay, so I can decide to go with this. I go with it because it suits it actually goes with what we want. Now this stage name, It's actually very funny. I don't know why they did this. But let's call it, let's say it's our testing environment. So you see, as I'm changing the name here, it's showing up here. So I can see testing. All right. Sorry, let's go back and make it development. All right. Okay. So now you see it has one job and one task. So I'll go in and select it. But before I do that, I need an artifact here. So I need to add this artifact. If not, I will not be able to do that. So it says, where do you want to get your artifact from? Do you want to get it from your build? Or do you want to run your code directly? Now, there are instances where people can run from the code directly. I don't want to do that. I want to run it from my build pipeline. So I'm going to say, I would have showed you guys this thing before now, but let's see. I'll remove this, and then I just take all the defaults. Again, if you want, you can leave that underscore. It's just that I don't like using underscore, but I'll leave it for now. And then, so it's saying, so you see the same thing. So this is the agent, run on agent, and then subscription. What subscription do you want? So this is a subscription. Authorize it. So the first time you're doing that, it will ask you to run that. So it's Coils. All right, so once it authorizes, that'll be good. And so you would probably, if you're running on somebody's subscription, except you have access like I do as an owner, you will not be able to do that. So I know you guys have been added to this. So what I'm going to do, I will add us. I'll create a service principal on this that we can also use. So it's asking me app type. What type of app do you want to deploy? Is it web app on Windows or web app on, you click the drop down, you see the different types. So is it on Linux or Windows? What did we create? Windows.
Windows.
Right? Yeah. So it will now go and filter all the web apps I have on my account. Remember, it has connected to my subscription, so it can see it now. So if I click this drop down, it will bring all of them out. You see those two we had earlier. So if we go back there to web apps, so you see we have 3 web apps and all of them are actually Windows. So we have them. So I go back there and select that one, Parts Unlimited. So it's good. And then you see that red dots, that red distance has actually cleared up. So again, all these things here, you can change them. Like this is the display name. If I wanted to have a different display name, I change it. So let me show you the YAML version of this, just in case you're interested in YAML. If you click the YAML version of this, so this is how it looks like. So you see the display name. Now forget all this thing up here, right? It's not needed. So what is important is the steps. You see the task. It uses, the name of the task is Azure RM Web App Deployment at 4. What is that for? I'm going to show you. The 4 is this task version. So there are different versions. There are version 2. Somebody updated it to version 3, and that person updated it to version 4. You can also create your own custom this thing. Okay. So they're using version 4. You can change things like display name. So whether you're using YAML or Classic, you can change it. I can say deploy Parts Unlimited, just something that shows you what it is. And then the connection type, I'm using all the defaults. It's Azure RM Resource Manager. And then app service type, it's a web app on Windows. And then the app service name, you see it has, I already selected when I selected this deployment, so I can't change it here. and then I just go with all the other defaults. So the package manager. Now here is very important. This is where you deploy your artifact from this package or folder. Now here, depending on where your pipeline pushes it, we are going to get into more of this, a lot of this. So you need to select it now, because app services, if you took notice of when we were doing app service, and then like, let me open that app service. You guys know how to create app service, right? Is there anybody that can't create app service? Hello?
Hi.
Is there anybody that can't create app service here? Can we all create app service? Let me ask.
We can try.
Yeah.
Who said we can
Yes.
try?
Yes, we can create.
I was joking.
Don't joke like that, please. If not, you will refund me. Please. All right. So app service uses, you go to deployment center. You remember you can deploy it several means, right? Several means. And then if you go to your FT, this credentials, remember there's one time we deployed using this, right? Where we had to set this up back in some of those early class we did. Now, this thing has what we call a published profile. Now a published profile, if you take a look at it, now this profile allows you, it creates a profile that that you can actually use to create your deployment. Now, there are two ways you deploy to Azure app services. It's either you're using a package deployment, all right, or you're using a package or a folder, right? So for now, our this thing lives inside this drop location, and it is actually this zip folder. This zip folder, all right, is what we want to deploy now. But you see this thing actually selects it and says that go to this system.default working directory and check everything inside it. Anytime you see asterisk, all right, in computing, it means all. So you check for anything, all the levels, and find out if there's anything that is .zip. If you get it, that's what I'm looking for. That's the meaning of this thing. Now, what is this system.default working directory? It's one of the variables. If you remember when I was talking to you about variables, right? Can't find that thing again. But it's actually a variable. So it uses that. So I'm just trying, what I'm saying here in essence is I'm not changing anything. I'm just using it like that. I'll take all the defaults and then save this thing and save it. Okay. Did it save? Yeah, it's saved. So I have listed. Now, once I've saved it, I'm going to create a release. So release is now, remember this app is open. Let me show you what this app is currently showing. It's currently showing this guy here, this thing here. So let's see if our deployment will work. So we just create a release, and then it has created release 1. Now, you notice if I don't want it to come like that release 1, what I can do again is to edit the pipeline, right? Edit the pipeline and let the name appear the way I want it to appear. Edit pipeline. So where do you go to change the options? You go here. You see it's coming as release dash. That is number. All right, so let's run it. Let's see. Let's look at the logs. Any questions so far? All right. Okay. So deployment succeeded. So let's see. I doubt if that application will run, but let's refresh this guy. You should have received a new thing, which I think it needs a database. So I don't think it will work. But let's check. So you see, so this is, if everything here works, it would replace this default page, this default deployment we had, and replace it with that C#, that Parts Unlimited project. It's taking time because we're using a free machine, so it's a small this thing they give us.
So basically from the pipeline,
Hmm?
deploying. I said basically from the pipeline,
Yeah, we've
we are,
deployed already, you know.
we are
You can
deploying back to the web app.
not back. We are deploying forward, yeah, but yeah.
Yes,
But yes, so we have gotten to the right. Remember, I told you the pipeline starts from your left to your right. Are you getting it?
yes.
So
Yes,
we are now at, and this is where we want to be. We want to, you see, at the end of the days, you want to take your code from the developer's machine, right, to this
Yes.
environment. Do you understand? So this whole
end
thing,
user.
so the cloud engineer's job focus on the right, right? The developer is on the left. The DevOps engineer helps two of them to work together, merges them. Now you see, we're getting this error. So it shows that this thing has deployed, but let me show you this code. This thing is running a web config file because, like I said, it needs a database, and I'm very sure of that. But there's a task you guys are going to do in one of the practicals. I'm going to give us that one. In fact, that's the one you guys are going to do next. It has a database, so you will take this thing the way I've done it, but you to add one more layer. You know, those days when our teachers finish teaching, the assignment they will give us will be hard. I used to work that one.
Like the one you gave us yesterday.
So, but that's what we did now, you know. So you see, we are getting a runtime error. Are you seeing the error we're getting here? It's a web config file. Let me show you that file. So if you go to the repos, come here, go to sub. There's a web config. Here is it. Source Parts Unlimited. This file here. So this thing needs a connection string to database. Yeah. I see it. It needs a connection string to database. So that's what it's missing. So if you don't have it, it's gonna fail. So that's why it's complaining. Yeah. But I knew it was gonna complain. So it's saying custom errors mode. Let's see if I can. Okay, custom error mode. This will not work. like that. Let me see. You work. Nice. So I updated this thing. Wow, interesting. So you see, the moment I did this thing, it triggered my view pipeline. So you see my view pipeline has started running. Do you guys see it? Because you know why it's run? Because you remember I enabled what? Continuous integration. So do you see? So you see now my commit number has changed. So it will run. So this what happens is now because I changed the code online, but I mean I could have if I had this code on my local machine, I would have just changed it from my local machine and then do a git push, blah blah blah, and then it will go up and then it will fire this thing and then it will start running. And let me go and enable my release pipeline and make it automatic so that once this guy finishes, it will deploy automatically. So this thing, I will not interact with it. Once the build pipeline finishes, you watch here, you'll notice I will have release 2. So let's see. So this is how you now create something that is CI, CD, and without any human interaction. So let's see our job. Where is it? Okay, so it has finished. So you see, if you look at the pipelines, you see that the last one ran and it passed. Let's go to release. I should see my release 2 running. So if that one goes well, it should update this thing. I'm not sure. Okay, look at where the problem is. So the current error. Anyway, that's by the way.
Please, did you refresh it?
The deployment is not true yet, but I did. Okay, it's done. So it will still give me the same thing because I didn't touch the parts that I should have also touched. This one should have been moved to this. But anyway, that's not, it needs a database. That's the bottom line. It's a database. But let me give us this one. Let me ask everybody to create this one. Let me give you this Node.js one. And I'll ask you to use the classic pipeline to create it. And try it now, and give us 30 minutes to do it. Or 45 minutes. Feel free to work in groups and use the classic pipeline and deploy it. It's a Node.js stuff. And then I'll give you another. It still did not work. So it needs some modification in the code. Anyway, but that's how you actually get the stuff to work. So our deployment is running. Now, remember now, for instance, where we are deploying into is our dev environment, right? So let's even assume, because this could also be a typical scenario where the developer is saying, oh, it's working on my machine. But now you deployed the pipeline, it deployed, but nobody can see anything, right? So, chairman, your code fee, but you see it has broken what we have, right? So again, this is why we have what we call dev environment, staging environment, and then production environment in a lot of settings. Some have QA and user acceptance environment, UAC, right? So these are different scenarios where, it's fine, development environment, so we can now begin to troubleshoot and debug what the problem is. I just posted a link. This one is it's a very straightforward, very short and simple this thing. You click on classic pipeline and then go through this prerequisite. What you need to do is fork this project. All right, so fork the following repo at GitHub. So you do that. And then after that, you have your sample repository. All right. So, remember when you fork a project, it goes to your own repo, right? So I expect what you now do from here, for instance, if I come here, I can now go to my repos, right? I can decide to actually import it from here or just go to create pipelines, create your pipeline, and then use classic, and then go to GitHub and then connect your GitHub account to it. And then it will bring the project inside it. So that's what you do for this. And then you just follow the steps it gives you inside here. Of course, is a node project. You can just type JavaScript inside of that template field. Once you select the stuff, for instance, type JavaScript, and then the next thing that will happen, so you type JavaScript here. JavaScript on Node.
Is it going to be a kind of assignment, homework?
Sorry?
Is it going to be a kind of assignment or homework?
Now we are doing it here. I already shared the link. Your assignment is going to be one of the lab, another lab.
A question, sir.
Yes, sir.
Am I asking? Okay, are you going to add us to the organization?
Yes, I think I already did that.
Let me check my mail. I think you said it failed yesterday.
A few persons failed, but I'll sort them out. But try to do on your own environment. Yeah, try to do from your own environment. And see. Any questions? Have we started trying it?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Has anybody finished? Are we done? And somebody talk to me.
I actually completed mine, but there it's giving me an error. Well, I'm not completed anyways. I created the pipeline, but it came up with an error.
Okay.
Trying to work on that.
Okay. All right. Cool. Just shout out, guys. We have like a few more minutes to go. So this, I'm trying to create another pipeline. I just quickly created a .NET application and I'm creating see if I can deploy that. That's finished.
The pipeline is running currently for me.
Nice. Yeah.
Please, you that got your own, I want to ask a question. Where did you see the process under the tax? I'm on my screen, I can't see it.
I didn't get your question.
So the
Like,
agent job area, you see the plus in the agent job where you have agent job 1.
yes.
Yeah, you see the plus sign. That's where you had different tasks. So when you click on it, it will bring up a search prompt for you, and then you can type in like npm test, publish test results, archive, and all of that.
Right, guys. I have our attention for a few minutes. So because I'm going to give us, are we all here?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to give us some more tasks. Like I told us, is we're now in the meat of the whole thing. You're going to have a lot of projects to do and a lot of stuff. I'm looking for my camera. So if you see my screen, I just want to add one more thing for us so that we can call it a day, and then I'll give us the labs, the next set of labs that we need to go do. So what I've done is I the same thing we did earlier, right? Where we have a code, right? And then we have a code and then we deploy to the Azure, right? We deploy to Azure. But this time around, what I've done is I created a simple .NET application, all right? So I didn't want to use our own, the ones you guys are using now, because that one is very straightforward. So I tried to replicate the first one we did, which is a .NET application. And I want to now show us the only different thing I would do here would be how you can remember when I was creating my deployment pipeline, the CD pipeline, right? I had to go and you saw I had to go to the portal to create that first, right? And then selected the app. Did we all see that I had to go to the portal to create this thing here before I was able to deploy it, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So what I want to do now this time around is I'm going to delete these two things, these two, not delete the entire resource group. I'll just delete, in fact, I'll delete this guy. I'll just delete the app so that I can create. Sorry, I'm not reading. So what I want to do now, I'm going to create a fresh web app. In fact, let me create a new resource group so that you will not think so I'm going to create a new resource group now. And then the resource group is RG tests IAC, right? And then I'll leave it in East US, and then I'll create that. So if I go to that resource group, you see it's empty, right? There's nothing inside the resource group, right? So I'm going to copy that name. Now, what I've done in my IAC, this is what we've done. I created a .NET project called Web Projects, right? So this is the project here, right? It's currently building and passing. There's no test inside it, so everything you wouldn't expect to see test. Now I created this ARM template. It's just what we've done. I created an app service plan, and then the app service plan will take this web app, right? And then I created a parameter to hold the name of the web app and the name of the app service plan, and then I created a parameter file so this will be the name of the web app, and then this will be the name of the app service plan. So as you can see, this resource group is empty. So we are going to create an app service plan and a web app from code using the CD pipeline, and then it will create an app service plan of this and this. So basically, I want to show you how you can deploy your templates to create an infrastructure. And then after the infrastructure is created, we will take this code that we've written, this web project, right, and deploy it, and we'll have that kind of view. We'll have this view. Let me show you what the view of the project will look like. So if I seed into web project, .NET build, so I build the project. So this is what that build in that your build pipeline, right? That build, this is what it does, something like this. So I'll do .NET run, so that it will run. So it's serving this application on that localhost. So this is October training, welcome. So right, so we are going to host this thing. So like right now you see it's on localhost, so it's only on my machine, so nobody can see it. Now we want to host this website or this web application, right? So that's what we want to do here. So let's go to the portal because I have done git push. So I have pushed my repo. So I pushed my repo here. So you see that this is the deploy October app. The same thing you saw on my local machine. This is the template, fine. And then this is the web project that I want to deploy. So how do I do that? I've created my build pipeline, what we've done earlier in this today using .NET. If I edit it, you see I created a build pipeline. I don't want to use NuGet 4.1, and I also don't want to build a solution because I don't have a solution file. Test, I don't have any test suite, so I'm going to also disable that and then queue that once again. And then what I'm going to do now is create a release pipeline. So this is where I'm going to show you. The only thing I'm going to add here now is how to use the ARM to create something. So if you click on release, so the first thing I want to do is, remember I want to deploy an app, right? I want to deploy an app service. So I click on deployment, select that. And then, but the thing is, I don't have the name of the app service. I have the name, but the name is in code, right? The name is inside this file. The name is here, right? So I have a couple of options. So the first thing I want to do, first of all, is to make use of that code, this ARM template, to be able to create that. So the first thing I would need to do is, if I click on this plus sign on run on agent, I want to add another task on that agent. And what is that task? It is called ARM deploy. So if I type ARM, so it brings up this thing for me, which is ARM template deployment. If I select now, if you look at the description, it says deploy an Azure Resource Manager template to all the deployment scopes. So let's assume you're using Terraform. This is the same thing you do, but it's not ARM template you type Terraform, and then you get that task. So, but since we've learned ARM template, so that's what I will use. I will click on it. I want to, first of all, create this before deployment, right? So one way you can do this, you can right click on it. You can actually hold it down and then drag it. So you drag it and then it will arrange properly for you. So I want the template first to be created, right? Before I deploy. Makes sense. So the thing is now asking me is, where is my, so I need to now fill up those things. So deployment scope is resource group. Now it's asking me Azure Resource Manager connection. So I need to set that connection, which is my resource group. My subscription. So I authorize that. So once I authorize that, it's Coils Web Academy at gmail.com. So once the authorization passes, so for those of us in US, your daylight saving is knocking off next Sunday, right? So that's, we are aware. So this is the subscription. And then the action we want is we want to create or update resource group. Now, this is very important. So we want to create or update resource group. Now, I already have a resource group I want to use, and that is RG test IAC, right? So that's the resource group. Now it's asking, we need to set the location. Where do we want it to go to? So let's use East US, where we have our resource group. Now, you see, if you come down here, it's asking me, where's the template location? Can you see it? So I say, okay, I want the template. So it's a linked artifact. So it means it's part of my artifact. But because I've not added any artifact, I need to go back here and add the artifact so that here I can select it's October project, and click on add, go back there, click on this, and go back to templates. Let's see if we can see it. So my build is not giving me anything. So let's go and see why. This is one unintelligent thing that happens with this thing. So it goes. Sorry, pipeline. What was the name of the pipeline actually? It's October project. All right, so I want this thing to actually, sorry, I need to enable this task because it needs to build, and then it needs to publish this artifact. Then I also want it to, let's save and queue. Mistake there. So let's go back to that template pipeline. Okay, so I'm going to add, so because my template is actually code, there's really nothing to build there. So what I'm going to do, I'll add another artifact, but this time around, I'll select it as code. All right, I'll select Azure repos, select a project, October, select the repository, which is October, and then the default branch is main, and I want to add that. I add that as another artifact here. Now, if I go back here, I'll select ARM and come down to that template. I'm looking for this one here, which is Azure Repos Git. I select that. I want my IAC. I select that. And then I select my templates. And I'm okay with that. And then the next thing is asking me template parameters, right? So I want to get the template parameters. So I go there, go back there. It's inside here. I select the parameter.json. I select that here. And then this is okay. But just one more thing I need to explain to you. When you're deploying a template, you need to set this deployment mode. You see it's a required field. Now, what is it? It has three options. First is incremental. The next one is complete. And then the third one is validation only. Now, if you use incremental, what will happen is that it will check for this, your ARM template, and see, did anything change? Remember, this thing is going to be running anytime you run the pipeline, right? So, and because this is infrastructure, you're not going to be changing infrastructure every day. So this thing will only say incremental is just check if there's anything that is different. If there's nothing different, don't run it. All right. Now, complete means anytime you run this thing, recreate this resource. You don't want to use complete, because what will happen is that every time you run, like if you run the app the first time, it creates it. But the next time you run it, what will happen is that it will recreate it, meaning it will first of all delete it and then try to create it again. And a lot of times it will fail. Then validation only means just check if this thing is okay. If there are like commas that, like the issue we were dealing with yesterday, where there was a comma and all those things. So you can decide to make this thing actually a validation purpose, not really something to deploy. So for now, I'll select incremental. And then the next thing I want to go do is go sort out this thing, which is put the name of the app service, and then it's app on Windows, but I need to set it inside here. So set my subscription, which is this. Now, the name of the app service, I don't have it, right? I don't have the name of the app service. So what do I do? Now, because I need to pass this name somewhere here, let's assume I have access to this code. What I will do, I'll just copy the name of the app service from here, okay? And take it in here and put it, because I know it will create my app and then give it this name. So you see every other thing is okay. All right. And then this guy will go take from this, take from this, and then it will build this for me. All right. So let's see. Stage name, I'll say deploy to dev. Okay, or staging. Let's assume staging. Let's call it staging only. I'm going to what's the for? All right. So I'm going to create a release now and allow it to create. Now, see what is going to happen. I just want you to see the interesting part. We're going to, while it's running, if everything goes well, I will expect to see it set up, spin up an app service and an app service plan here inside of the resource group. So, and if our code is actually well and fine, it will deploy it inside for us. So let's go back. So you see it's working on the app template now. It's checking it, making sure it's okay. Is it the right format? Do you know what you're doing? Those kind of things. And once it's okay, it's fine, then deployment name has started. It has linked to Azure. So you see this start, it did validation of the templates. And then if I look here, if I refresh, can you see? So this is how we use IAC, infrastructure as code. Are you seeing I did not come to Azure Portal to create anything, right? I just wrote my templates so you can use this thing to create a virtual machine. Just define the virtual machine here as code. That's why we call it infrastructure as code. You create it here, put it in a pipeline, inject it in a pipeline, and then run it. It goes, spins up that resource. So essentially, this is, and then you see it has deployed that app. It has created that app service plan for me. So to be honest, a lot of times this is how you're going to be interacting with the cloud infra. You only come to the portal to check things and all of that. But in an organization, you see this is reusable. So this is why that's class we had where we tell you that this is something reusable. So you see, what will it take me to create another new app now? What is it? Is it not just to change the name of the parameter, right? I just go to the parameter file, give it a new name, and then run this pipeline again. It spins up another one, right? And then if I wanted to spin up multiple ones, I'll just create multiple parameter file and link it to one same template, and then it can create all of them at the same time. Okay, let's see if that pipeline will go. I know it will not go because there's no zip file there. So let's go back and check. Yeah, pipelines. Maybe. Any questions so far? I was too fast, right?
Very, very fast.
Yes, very. That was why the came in.
Very, very fast.
It's like you are deleting the one we learned before.
Hi, Chris.
Yes, sir.
It's like Mr. Cody want to join the class.
Who?
Okay. Is it now?
Yeah, no, there's no listed. Anybody can join anytime.
He said it was not allowing before.
Maybe because he left something. All right. So, but I only added one more layer on what we've done so far, which is how to use your ARM template to create the resource, right? I use the same pipeline we've been using, and then just added that one to deploy that. That was the only different thing. So I just wanted to show us this so that we can do the labs, all right? And then feel free to try out how you can use your ARM templates to create resource. So if you go back to that this guy here, which is this, all right? So we've actually done this one we just did now, and then I already gave us one to do, which is this one, which is what a number of us are trying to complete. The next thing I want us to do before we come back next week is create a CI/CD pipeline for .NET with.
Oh, Chris, you're loading us too much.
It's projects.
You're loading us plenty as if the ones we have forgotten it.
Have you forgotten anyone?
You're loading us too much. Let's take it gradually so that we can actually grab it.
Yeah. No. I'm just giving you, take your time. It's not like just take your time. Remember, we're building on top each of every one of them. So these are all the projects we have here, but this is what we did today actually. So I just want us to do it again. So this time around, this one is complete. Remember, the first one we did, and that's why I'm doing it. The first one we did is just for the CI, right? It was only CI. It's just that I decided to add the CD part. So this is the completion of that one, if you understand what I mean. So it's I just want to push that to us to try, if you have the time, within the week before we come back on Saturday. And then we are going to go over it again. So we'll keep building CI and CD pipelines for now, and then try a flavor of other things until the end of the class. Don't worry, sir, you'll be fine, sir. Then I also want to encourage us to talk to ourselves. I like the way quite a number of us are already collaborating and working together. It's very, very good. I like that. So please, let's have more of that. This one I sent to you now is quite easier than this one actually. So I'll encourage you to focus on that one. If you're not able to do this other one I sent as classwork.